So we're here with Christine Paterson, and you're the mother of two boys, Thomas and Michael, with Christianson syndrome, a very rare syndrome. What can you tell us about Christianson?
Well, what I've been living with is watching their body, deteriorate because it's neurological, and if they do learn stuff, they can lose it over time. So not eating, if they did have the chance to walk, they would lose that. So it really affects their whole aspect of bodies, their seizures. It's very hard to describe their condition. It's just rounding it up as neurological. It just affects the whole neurological part of their body.
And it's a very rare condition as well.
Yes.
How rare is it?
100 in the world and 3 in Australia, and 2 of them I take care of, and they're my sons. So, interesting thing about it is that there's a 50% chance of a girl or a woman carrying it, 50% chance of a boy getting it. And that's always not really knowing much about the condition, because it came out in 1998 when it was first released by a doctor called Dr. Christianson, which of course where the name comes from. But yeah, it does affect the whole neurological. So if they were eating and walking, by the time they're teenagers, they could lose it, which is pretty scary.
Yeah, definitely. And it being a condition that's so rare as well, that makes it difficult when you're trying to interact with something like the NDIS, where they don't understand the condition.
Because they can't tick a box. NDIS is a place where they want to dot the I's, cross the T's, tick a box and move to the next client. It's like we're just a number game. Whereas I see that my boys are trying to struggle with just getting out of bed is a challenge. And you sort of think, well, okay, I've had an extra day with the boys. We don't know what their life expectancy is. I've even told NDIS that where it says other in their little system, I could tick that and write Christianson syndrome, but according to them, their computer won't handle it, apparently. But yes, they're not compassionate. They cried to me saying that there's 2,000 of them and 400,000 of us. I said, well, actually, there's 3 in Australia, but I've seen in the 5.5 years my boys have been with NDIS, there's not a compassionate. I tell them that my boys need an eye gazing to communicate. They're like, no, they can't have a toy. I didn't say it was a toy. They learnt to babble as a baby. They used to crawl when they were a child. These days, modern technology is eye gazing. My son has found there's a DJ on his iPad. To this day, I still don't know how he found it, because I can't find it myself. But he's actually communicating. The other day he said to me, I don't like, and apparently he didn't like the game I picked. So that's the first step in communication. But NDIS are like, no. So we got that fight with Thomas. They said he has to have a trial run. I said, well, he has a trial run with his brother when his brother's asleep. No.
And
that's all they say is no.
No. And we've spoken about this before as well. The NDIA have never come to your house, is that right? To see the circumstances.
If you ask me, in the 5.5 years we've been with them, no. And that's when they give us the number of, there's so many of people out there with disability and there's less of them.
Yeah, and previously I know they've required you to take the boys all the way out into the northern suburbs, which is a very difficult thing to do. So you can tell us about that?
Yeah, basically trying to get the boys out and about to anywhere. when I had a small vehicle, it was all no. That's all they had. They said to me to go and study the handbook. I said, okay, well, you tell me what's in book 3 on page 3 in section A then. And they went, what? And I said, well, don't tell me what to do when you can't do it. But yeah, no, basically all they get from them is a no.
And that was one of the big struggles that you've been having over the last few years is trying to get a vehicle that the boys are able to use, because the previous vehicle was too small. And
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it was too small because the boys, not knowing their condition that much, suddenly had a growth spurt. And they're on the verge of, if they get a new wheelchair, I can't get them in. And I even went to the police station to find out my legal rights. If they had another growth spurt and tipped their head, I couldn't drive it. So I had the funding there, but that's the thing about NDIS, is that there's a funding there. I can move it around the core. That's what they keep telling me. I want to move it from here to here. No. Why? No, is all they reply.
Yeah.
So I had the money there for the vehicle, but I couldn't use it. I put in a grant, variety, couldn't do it because of the COVID, which I can understand. And then we went in a grant with someone else who actually came in and they started off saying they'll give us 10 grand each for each boy. They gave us a total of 22 for the boys. And then when I sold my smaller car, that went for the remainder, and now we've got a bigger car.
Excellent. We saw that car when you arrived here today as well, and it's got all sorts of buttons and gadgets on it as well. But the boys can fit in there, and you can stand up and
That's the good thing about it. I can stand up. No more yoga positions. No more weird trying to get them in. Hurting my shoulder. So the boys are loving it. They were not sure about it. They thought I took I stole a SCOSA bus because it looks like an old taxi driving car or a SCOSA. And I went, no, it's ours. I don't think they understand.
No.
But the rest of my family are like, are you sure? And I went, yes, it's ours.
Yeah. And it shouldn't have taken years and a grant from a non-government organisation when, as you say, you've got the funding there and they wouldn't give it.
And that's the frustration, because they said you've got to say you can move the money around the core budget. I said, okay, I want to move it from here to here. No explanation. When they reject all Thomas's applications, they still say no.
And so the car battle has been won at the moment, but the new battle and a serious battle. So we talked a little bit about the boys' condition, but one of the aspects, or the main aspect, is the constant seizures, and so you're currently having difficulty getting a device that can weigh Thomas.
Basically, I'm supposed to weigh both boys every week. And it's just a matter of not an extra equipment. I mean, I'll have so many equipment. It's you're changing the bar, and it's got a scales in the bar. It should be just a cut and dry. A matter of going to maintenance. The funding, the money's there. No, that's all they say is no. Because apparently, according to NDIS, and I am glad that you are sitting down, all the equipment for anybody, including my boys with a disability, is under $1,500. There is not equipment out there for anyone with a disability. Wheelchairs could be up to $8,000. My special beds for my boys are $10,000. baths are around 10,000, but according to NDIS, it's under 15. That's when they'll start helping you out if it's under 1,500. Not before or anything like that. It's they have no idea.
And the consequence of not being able to measure Thomas accurately, what's the consequence of that?
Well, without measuring the boy's weight, because their medication goes by weight. So if their weight increases, the medication won't work. So they'll have more seizures. If they lose weight, then again, the medication's not strong enough and they'll have more seizures.
And so we were talking about this before we started. So Thomas is having a lot of seizures at the moment. What impact is that having on him?
I don't know what he's on, how he's got the strength, because some of the seizures he screams to the point he's holding his breath, and you think, oh my God, is it going to be a 30-second seizure? Is it going to be a 3-minute? Is it going to be, how long is it going to be? You know, and I call Thomas's seizures the deadly quiet one, because he's so quiet when he has them. The only time you know he's having them is when he's gasping for air, or, you know, because he hasn't got oxygen. Whereas Michael, I call the noisy one, because he does this sound and you think, yep, oxygen's gone in, let's just ride it through. We have found out recently that with the boys, with their condition, with Christianson syndrome having seizure related, apparently doesn't matter what combination of seizure medication they're on, they're immune to all seizure medication. It's just finding the right one for that particular child. And when you do, you've got to keep an eye on the weight, because of a slight increase, which is Michael's problem, and a decrease, which is Thomas's problem, because he's lost a bit of weight, medication doesn't work. And with all the COVID rules and regulations, we can't really go to the facility all the time. So having one at home once a week is easy, but people say, it'll be fine. And I went, no, it's not, because I have to get through NDIS. You know, and there's people out there that's probably vaunting the system. But for me, I'm just using it for whatever I need for the boys, just to get their everyday living. You know, we're fighting for a special standing frame now for Michael. So he's got that ability to stand and have that freedom, so he's not stuck in a wheelchair all the time. And, you know, I mean, it's basically with them, it's having 2 adult babies, because they're mentally babies, crawling around the floor. But to give them that chance of walking, like I had Thomas in the walking machine, and he decided he didn't want to walk no more. He wanted to go around in circles and do helicopters around in circles. So, but the fights I've had with NDIS is just to widen the doorways. That was a challenge. We don't need a challenge. NDIS is there to help take the stress. And
I know we've got you a coffee here, and I know we've spoken previously, you've got your Fitbit watch that keeps track of how much sleep you're getting, and
I'm not looking at it today.
No, because your nights, you're all constantly on alert for seizures and things. Yeah, it's
constantly. I could turn the sensor of the monitor down if I wanted to, but because you've got one that's noisy and one that's quiet, you don't want to. And Thomas had a bigger seizure, or was it towards the end of June this year? So that was pretty scary, because he was just, I mean, he's having 30-second seizures all the time, but it was like a cluster that's just come into a big explosion, and then arms and legs are going. And yeah, it's just a bit of a challenge, because he doesn't understand what's happening with his body, but then he gets stressed over it, and then you have to remind him to breathe, and then being in the middle of the night, you're like, I'm at the stage where I'm over baby, but I've got babies in the house, so it's constant monitoring them. I mean, I had to fight, and I have to fight to keep it. I've got carers coming now till 8 o'clock at night, so I've got at least that break where the carers are keeping an eye on the boys. 9 times out of 10 I've gone to sleep, but it's because my body needs to sleep.
And we've talked about COVID restrictions, and obviously, and you and the boys have had COVID and gotten through that.
Scary.
Yeah.
Because basically the common things that can kill boys with Christianson syndrome is pneumonia and seizures. And from what I understand, the COVID is pneumonia with influenza. So when they got it, I think they only got a mild case of the COVID, which was pretty lucky. But they were not coping just with the mild case of COVID. You know, the coughing and stuff, they just wasn't coping.
And we understand, obviously, you know, you're vaccinated and both boys are vaccinated as well, and obviously there's the need for restrictions generally in the past with masks and things, but what are the challenges with the boys and mask restrictions?
We're trying to get them the third vaccine, which then they're fine getting the vaccines. That's not a problem, as long as it's the visor, because all the other with Christianson syndrome tend to get visor. It seems to be good. But they won't do the third vaccine unless they wear a mask. Now, my boys can't wear a mask. Michael Hull freaks out. He paranoids to the point where he's just frozen with fear, and Thomas will hold his breath, literally. And then if I don't watch both of them, they can scare themselves into a seizure because they're scared. It's like if you went to all the babies and say, well, congratulations, welcome to the world, but we're going to put a mask on you. They've got no idea. When Thomas recently had his teeth checked, to get the boys to have their teeth checked, it's not like when you and I go to the dentist, they have to go to sleep each time. So when they go to sleep, they do x-rays, they do fillings, they do everything in one hit while they're asleep. And they don't like injections at the hospital, so I said it has to be the mask, but you've got to come from behind. So even with the mask, with the COVID mask, I came from behind. No, they don't like the material. At least with the mask to go to sleep, it's a short. Really, once they're asleep, it's off. But when you're waiting to go to the doctors and they're wearing a mask, they can't even keep headphones or sunglasses on. Their whole face is so sensitive. I mean, just to get them to brush their teeth in the morning is a challenge. So just to get the thing on, watching a boy freak out, another one holding breath, and this one starts having seizures and holds breath, and then it's like, it's quite scary because you got to tell them to start breathing, and if they don't listen or they can't understand, it's, you know, they're going to pass out. It's quite scary, but it's like most places won't accept the boys unless they're wearing a mask.
And so it's a bit like the NDIS, where it's the one-size-fits-all approach and not being able to take into account when there's difference or difficulties with the one-size-fits-all approach there, and also we've talked about previously. Obviously, it's a full-time job caring for the boys, and it takes up all your time. There's not really much understanding that if someone else was paid to do what you do, how much that would cost, and also by making you fight all the time, it makes it so much harder to do what you do.
Yeah, it's from what I understand with NDIS, they were supposed to take all that pressure of fighting and if anything, it's made it escalate to even more stress. We've got enough stress just looking after. Like for me, I've got to just looking after the boys, getting through each day, which is a blessing because it's like, I've got another day. Because I don't know if the next seizure they have, that's it. You know, if it's like a catch-22. We know that at the moment for Michael, the medication's correct, but it's not working because he's put on that little bit of weight. Whereas Thomas needs to have his medication reviewed, but then you've got neurologists retiring, some are on leave, so it's like it's that aspect. So I did put my Fitbit on the boys to see how much sleep, and Thomas is getting virtually none at all. His mind's not actually shutting down, whereas Michael's is actually, because his medication is better, is getting better sleep. And I mean, I looked at mine, I went, mine's very close in between both. Hey, I'm not commenting on mine either.
No.
But it's not healthy because lack of sleep can cause seizures to happen.
And the longer you have to wait for NDIS to approve those scales that you need, the longer they're not getting the sleep, and it's just it becomes.
It's their health that declines. And with NDIS, it's like, you've got to put the paperwork in this way. So we do. You know, like when I mean by we, I mean like there's Navita, there's SCOSA, you know, especially Navita with all the therapists and stuff. And they're a non-profit organisation, and they do all this stuff. They do it the way NDIS, but then they change the rules, of course. And when NDIS changed the rules, everyone's supposed to just automatically have to comply. And then they reject it, and you think, well, why? We put it the way you said it, how you want it. Oh no, we don't do it that way anymore. Oh, was that 2 weeks ago? It's like every 2 weeks they change it. Expect all the organisations to actually comply to their changes, which they cannot remember their own changes. So it's giving us stress that we don't need. And I have to reduce my coffee, but my coffee has increased my intake since NDIS. They don't know their own system.
And you're never getting the same person on the phone, or very rarely.
No, and it's almost like a competition. That's the feeling, because I mean, in 5.5 years, in March was the first time I got not one, but 2 phone calls from NDIS, and all they did was complain that I dobbed them into disability rights. I went, well, give me a 2-year-old. At least I'll have a good conversation with a 2-year-old. Because that's not let's make a song and dance. Do your job. You're supposed to help us out. But you say no, no, no. That's why they have a cue card which says no. No for this, no for that.
And that's why, you've tried all of the internal systems, and that's why you've agreed to come on to the podcast, because you've tried everything that you can.
Yeah, because you guys have come to the house, it's like, but all I get is a song and dance from NDIS going, but there's too many of you and we can't keep going to everyone's house. And I'm like, okay, well, just don't make a big song and dance about it.
And when we came to the house, we discovered that the boys are fans of a particular 1980s TV show. What do they like watching?
The Thunderbirds, HR Puff and stuff, Banana Splits. I showed them the new Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Were not impressed.
No, they didn't like the remake.
No, they were not impressed. It's like, where's the puppet strings? The old cartoons. So yeah, banana splits where my daughter's like, not banana splits again. I went, yeah. it just keeps them calm. It's finding what works that keeps them calm so they don't get stressed. If they get stressed, then they start having seizures. And it's to stop what triggers them, because I've had a lot of people tell me about the oil, cannabis oil. My boys are not qualified because the type of seizures they've got is called infantiles, because they're only short. And the type of seizures they've got, if it goes for close to 5 minutes, they can be brain dead. So the fact that Thomas is having so much seizures at the moment is like, how much can your body just stand there screaming? It's his only way of telling me, Mum, I need help, but I'm going at what, there's rules you've got to do to go to certain aspects you've got to follow, but it's like, yeah, I've got to get that through NDIS.
And keeping the boys calm, you're not allowed to talk about the NDIS around them.
No, that's one way we do not say it. It's I was talking to one of the carers, made a mistake.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we can get the word out about what your experiences are, and
because there is a lot of people out there that just don't know who to talk to about NDIS, and I'll probably, because there are reviews coming up, I'll have NDIS saying again, would I like to go back to agent management? No. There is no way, because basically with agent management, if I had to fork out money, it would take over 6 months for NDIS to pay, whereas plan managed, within 2 weeks it's back in my bank account. If I can't wait no longer for the boys to get their equipment, although the eye gazing I can't afford, but small objects and stuff. But yeah, if they don't get it at a certain period, when they're starting to learn how to do things, like Michael's starting to hold things, so maybe he'll be able to hold a spoon, in theory, if it works. We could get that, but no, you've got to go through a system with NDIS, and it takes 12 months.
And then every time the plan's reviewed, and you've got 2 different separate plans, you've got to go through that process again and again.
And for me, it's repeating myself, because I do Thomas's and then I do Michael's, and then watching NDIS, you have no idea. Oh, they'll be fine, they'll be cured, because Thomas was cured at 16 apparently from NDIS, from a non-curable disability. So maybe that's why they're rejecting things, because they just don't know. They can't handle people with normal, what I call normal is spinal bifida, cerebral palsy, that kind of thing, because NDIS can tick a box. But because my boys are complex, anyone with complex, rare disability, NDIS say no, because they can't handle it. My rollover to NDIS was disgusting. That was, you're coming to us, if you don't come to us, you'll lose everything and your boys will die. That is what they told me. And someone else said, well, if you complain, I said, what's that going to do? Do I have to dot an I and cross a T for you to actually do something? No, because that's all they say is no. It would be nice if they can come out to the house to see how people live, not just what my boys go through, because there's other people out there with disabilities. But no, they won't. They might go to some, because I've heard some people with disabilities they've had visits from NDIS. I said, well, what have you done to do that? Because they've not once come to me to even see what the boy's needs are. And it's the same fight that my friend in Sydney with her boy with Christianson syndrome.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, Christine, and sharing some of your experience. And I know you'll have to go pick up the boys soon and have another busy day ahead of you.
There's not enough hours in the day, and this is my only rare month. One day out of my month where I get to come here, and because when you asked me if we were doing the podcast, I'm like, can I do it? No, not that day. No, not that day. So just one of those rare moments I grabbed to do something.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate it, and hopefully we can get the message out about Christianson's and about the difficulties with the NDIS as well.
Yes, that'd be great.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.